The Hypno's Lullaby V2 mod just dropped, and even though it was technically cancelled, a lot of the mod was actually completed, so it looks like we have a fully fleshed out mod here. In this video, I'm going to go over the Hypno's Lullaby actual creepypasta, I'm going to go over each of the characters in the mod, and then we'll talk a little bit about why this mod ended up being cancelled. Now, the first character that we need to go over is going to be Hypno, because I think if we go over his creepypasta, it'll help you understand how boyfriend and girlfriend ended up in this situation. Now, the Hypno's Lullaby story actually reads a lot like a poem, and it goes like this. Come little children, come with me, safe and happy you will be, away from your homes, now let us run. With Hypno, you'll have so much fun. Oh little children, please don't cry, Hypno wouldn't hurt a fly. Be free, be free, be free to play, come down in my cave with me to stay. Oh little children, please don't squirm, those ropes I know will hold you firm. Hypno tells you this is true, but sadly, Hypno lied to you. Oh little children, you mustn't leave, your families for you will grieve. Their minds will unravel at the seam, allowing me to haunt their dreams. But surely all of you must know that it is time for you to go. Oh little children, you weren't clever. Now you shall stay with me forever. This creepypasta is based on the Pokédex of Hypno, where it kind of implies that there was a time where Hypno actually hypnotized a child and took that child away. In the Pokemon games, though, it doesn't make it seem as if Hypno actually did anything to harm the child. This creepypasta takes Hypno and makes him like the worst case scenario of what he could do with his abilities. The thing that really makes Hypno's story so sinister is that he tricks these kids in order to put the parents in distress so that he can basically devour their bad feelings, right, their nightmares. And after he caused all that pain and suffering, he could just let the kids go, but it's implied that he does not. And this leads into the Friday Night Funkin' mod and why girlfriend is out there battling Hypno to begin with. It seems that boyfriend actually went missing one night, and girlfriend, knowing that that is suspicious, went out looking for him. And that's when she actually encounters Hypno and she sees these bloody footprints leading into the woods. Now, since it's girlfriend, she never actually understands how much danger she's in going against Hypno. Because as we see in the end screen, Hypno actually does have enough power to actually manipulate girlfriend or to hypnotize her for a short time. Meaning that if she slips up, he can actually do her harm, unlike a lot of enemies that she faces. Another thing that pops up in this mod that relates back to the actual creepypasta is that girlfriend finds boyfriend laid out in a cave, meaning that Hypno probably kidnapped boyfriend so that his family would start to worry about him so that he could devour their nightmares and their bad thoughts as well. A fun fact that a lot of people don't know is that partway through the mod, Hypno starts to lose control of his actual body. We see that his head gets all elongated, his body turns into basically like this lump of flesh. And that's because apparently he's putting so much energy into trying to maintain his pendulum that he can't actually keep his body in his regular form anymore, which is why he's falling apart in a sense. Now, before we move on from Hypno, I also want to talk about the songs Be Gone Purpose and Memories, because we get to see small Hypno and this other version of Hypno kind of standing on a rooftop. Now, I'm pretty sure the visuals here kind of give away what Hypno is thinking about doing, but a lot of people don't understand why he feels like this. And from my understanding, this version of Hypno actually had a trainer that ended up unaliving herself, and now he feels like he has no purpose, which is why he's on this rooftop. Definitely very dark, but it does kind of give another perspective to why Hypno is doing the things that he is doing. Next on our list, we're going to talk about all the Lost Silver creepypasta characters, but first I got to tell you the actual backstory of the Lost Silver creepypasta, and it goes like this. So the Lost Silver creepypasta actually originated on 4chan, and it was a thread from all the way back in 2010. Now, the original creepypasta started with this person who was a huge Pokemon fan, and he ended up going to GameStop to find a copy of Pokemon Silver, and he ended up finding a copy, but it was dirt cheap. Now, in actuality, that should have been the first red flag, because if anybody has been to GameStop, you know dang well no Pokemon game is cheap. Now, when this person actually got the game home and loaded it up, they noticed that there was already a save file on there, and it was kind of weird. The Pokédex had all 251 Pokemon in it, and the person also had maxed out their money and their levels. But the most unsettling thing was the actual party that the person had. The party basically contained 5 unknown and 1 Cyndaquil. And according to the creepypasta, the unknown spelled out leave and the Cyndaquil's name was hurry. The narrator of this creepypasta also talks about finding himself trapped in a still version of the Bellsprout Tower. And apparently parts of this room were just completely engulfed in darkness. And even when he tried to use flash, the only thing that happened was that the room turned this menacing red color. And as the trainer got deeper into this world, he noticed that Pokemon don't faint here, but they're actually unalived, kind of like doing a Pokemon Nuzlocke, but for real. The unknown that originally spelled leave started spelling dying, and then eventually even spelled no more. In the original creepypasta, the narrator also had to end up battling Pokemon trainers from Red and Blue, and I think some of them actually pop up in this mod as well. And a fun fact, in the creepypasta, we actually see Celebi and we see Pikachu going at it, and they end up taking each other out by using Perish Song and Destiny Bond. The narrator also noticed that the longer he was in this Pokemon universe, the more he started to actually lose his sanity, but also pieces of his body. And this is why when we look at Gold, he literally has no arms or leg. Now, when we actually look at the Friday Night Funkin' mod, we get to see Gold first fighting against Red, and a lot of people don't know this version of Red is actually from a creepypasta called Snow on Mount Silver. And in that creepypasta, we basically see Red get trapped on top of Mount Silver, and his Pokemon basically start to freeze until they're unalived. And since he can't fly off the mountain, he can't use an escape rope, and he can't simply walk down, Red eventually faces the same fate as his Pokemon. And that's why in this mod, we see him take on this skeletal form where he's missing a leg and all his Pokemon are laying on the floor. That's because this is how the creepypasta actually ends for Red. The next character that we get to see in the mod is Silver, and he's in the song called Insomnia. He actually comes from the video game version of Lost Silver. Gold can run into him and battle his sleeping Feraligatr, which is what we see here on the screen. What's kind of funny though is in the mod, Cyndaquil uses something called Nightmare, and it basically turns Feraligatr back into Toadette, and then he simply faints after that. And the last words that Silver actually says to you is even. Now, a lot of people have different interpretations of this, but in my opinion, I think that this kind of shows how a lot of these kids in the Pokemon games kind of have their moment of glory and then they just kind of fade out. As you see in the actual mod, he basically has no mouth. It looks like it's been sealed in, and his eyes are literally black, just sunken and gone. It's almost as if they're saying that as these kids reach their peak, they no longer have anything to actually offer. They're just getting replaced by new kids, and the Pokemon adventure just starts over. And I think this is part of the reason that we see Feraligatr literally being dormant here, meaning that he has no more room to grow. And now that Silver has served his purpose, he's basically just going to be forgotten out here in this dark, gloomy forest. If you're still with me in this video, put down your favorite Gen 2 Pokemon. Mine is definitely going to be Chikorita. Now, the next character that we see in this mod is actually called Glitchy Red, and he's from the creepypasta of the same name. Now, this creepypasta hits home for a lot of people because, first of all, it deals with Pokemon Red, which invokes a sense of nostalgia for a lot of people, and it also adds some insight into why Red is so silent, meaning why he doesn't talk. Now, to sum this creepypasta up, it basically involved a person who bought a copy of Pokemon Red off of eBay, and as soon as this person actually received the game and booted it up, he knew that it wasn't a normal game. But he ignored that, figuring that he had spent enough money on regular Pokemon games in the past so he could deal with having one bootleg copy. Now, the protagonist of this story played through the game pretty much normally up until he got to the part where he can do that missing number glitch, but for whatever reason, the glitch didn't actually work on this particular game. So the protagonist just went on playing through the game and ended up going into the mansion that's on Cinnabar Island. Now, when he walked into the mansion, there was actually some text that popped up that said, "Nice try, Red." And this actually started to creep this guy out because if you played through the Pokemon games before, you know that this actual text doesn't pop up. And it was also in all caps, as if it was the actual player saying this. Now, as he continued to progress through the game, he noticed that Red kept talking to him. And Red was basically asking, why are these things happening to him? Why is he suffering? Why are there so many glitches in his world? And why has he basically been tortured for doing nothing wrong? Now, initially, the protagonist thought that this was just a glitch, but as they started happening more and more often, he realized that this was something more than just a glitch. This video game character seemed to actually be talking to him and be actually suffering based on these glitches. And to make matters worse, one day when the protagonist was asleep, he actually had a nightmare that a kid in a red and white cap that looked a lot like Red actually appeared in his dream. And when his dream version of Red saw the protagonist, he attacked him, scratching up his chest and his sides. And this wouldn't have been a big deal, is when the protagonist woke up, he didn't have those same scratches on his chest. And to make matters worse, even to this day when the protagonist wakes up, he still finds those scratches on his chest, meaning even after he beat the game, Red still comes into his dreams and attacks him. Now, while this creepypasta is obviously kind of scary, one thing that kind of always stuck with me is how sad it is as well. The whole story, Red is basically just trying to understand why he has to suffer, why does he have to die, why does he have to be dismissed and forgotten even though he was supposed to be a hero, like a Pokemon master. And since he never actually gets the answer to that, he just stops talking. That's why whenever you run into him, he's just silent. Definitely a scary Pokemon creepypasta, but also very sad. The next character that we see on our list is called Strangled Red, and he's from a creepypasta of the same name, and this one is also very dark. The narrator basically talks about trying to trade his Charizard with his brother so that his brother can finally complete his Pokédex. But during the trade, something happens to where the game glitches and Charizard is basically lost forever. Now, what makes this really sad is that Charizard was basically his favorite Pokemon. Now, after a year of being depressed and mourning, the trainer finally decides that he's going to try to resurrect his Charizard. So it has very much Pet Cemetery type of vibes. And he tries to use the glitch Missing No in order to make this happen, but in the game it actually has a quote that says sometimes dead is better, and he does succeed in resurrecting something, but it is not the Charizard that he came to love, but instead a type of abomination. In the game, it actually gives him a couple of options, and the last option is strangle. And in the creepypasta, that's what the character actually chooses, which is why it has the name Strangle. Very sad creepypasta because all he wanted to do is bring back his best friend, and he ended up basically making that Charizard suffer death twice. The next characters that we see in the mod are going to be Hellsbell and Beelzebub, or aka the old man in the suit. And this one is from a creepypasta called Pokemon Hellbell. And the creepypasta basically talks about how a young girl inherited a copy of the Pokemon game from her brother because he simply didn't like Gen 4 Pokemon. And apparently he had hacked into the game and got like 6 level 100 Rayquazas. Since the young lady hated this Pokemon, she went ahead and started trading those Rayquazas for other Pokemon. And one of the Pokemon that she traded the Rayquaza for was Bronzong. Now when she got this Pokemon, she noticed that its nickname was Hellbell. And since she was very religious, she was going to get rid of the Pokemon at first, but she noticed that she couldn't trade it and she also couldn't put it back in the PC. And even when she tried, it gave her a message saying, I can't go back on my own, you need to take me back. So trying to follow the direction of this Pokemon, she does end up trying to take it back to its original owner, and she ends up finding an old man in a suit. Now I believe that this old man is supposed to be the devil, and I say this because if you look at the actual mod, it looks like they're actually in a part of hell there. But in the creepypasta, he also asks for the woman's true name, and he also tells her to breathe into the actual Game Boy. And once she does this, he says, thank you, now you belong to me. And from that moment on, she was basically like a cursed human, meaning that she could barely sleep anymore. Any food that she ate basically tasted like ashes, and whenever she would go around any type of wildlife, they would either bark at her or just run away. And while some people don't think that that's a big deal, that's all animals. Even her own dog would run away from her at this point, even though the dog should know that that's his owner, that she loves and cares for him. And while in my opinion, this one isn't as scary as some of the other ones, anything that actually deals with like the real devil is kind of creepy in a way. Now the next character that we see in the mod is actually Missing No, and this one is interesting because the missing number glitch doesn't really have a single creepypasta that's dedicated to it, but instead it has multiple different creepypastas with different scenarios. The one thing that all these creepypastas have in common though is that it usually deals with Pokemon getting trapped into their Pokeballs and then being corrupted because they can't get out. These creepypastas are usually very sad because they don't just deal with Pokemon fainting, but literally being unalive because they simply cannot get out of their Pokeballs. The next character we see on the list is called Buried Alive, and he's the main antagonist of the creepypasta also called Buried Alive. And initially, he was supposed to be a Pokemon trainer who you actually fought as like a boss in the Pokemon Tower, but later on he was actually replaced by Marowak's ghost. For the people who would have been able to make it to him, the Pokemon that you would have faced was a Gengar, a Muck, and then 2 white hands. Now the white hands actually appear in this mod here, and the white hand is basically a Pokemon which is depicted as like a shriveled, decayed hand. And the 2 white hands could use the ability Transform to actually turn into the opponent's Pokemon and attack them like that. In the Friday Night Funkin' mod, we actually see Girlfriend pop up and it looks like her face is gone. Those are actually the white hands transforming into something that they know would be a weakness for Boyfriend. And if you did end up actually losing a battle against Buried Alive, it would be this screen that says finally, fresh meat, and then Buried Alive would drag the player back to his grave and devour that person. So now I want to go ahead and talk about why this mod ended up actually being canceled. It seems that over the last couple of days, a lot of people in Banbuds team has ended up leaving, and it's because apparently a couple of months ago, he ended up using the N-word while in Discord. And apparently he did apologize to the people that were involved in the room at the time. But apparently the topic was brought back up on Twitter, and after that, I'm assuming that people started leaving the team. Now, personally, I feel like there's something been left out here because it seems like once the team found out about this, they either started leaving or maybe Twitter started harassing the team as a whole, so then they started leaving. I'm not really sure, but from reading the comments, it doesn't seem like a lot of people, at least in his audience, were very much upset with him saying the N-word. A lot of people actually were like, hey, I forgive you. But I do have 2 things that I want to say about this. For whatever reason, it seems like mod creators in the Friday Night Funkin' community cannot go without saying racial slurs or without trying to go after some children. Everybody that has been canceled for the most part has been one of those 2 things, and both of those things are not hard to not do. And with that being said, it always surprises me how many people will come to the defense of some of these mod creators, even the ones that do like really atrocious things. Arguably, Banbuds didn't do anything necessarily that bad compared to other people, but what he did was still worthy of a little bit of backlash. Because regardless if he said the N-word with an A or an R, he still said a racial slur, right? And when you look at the context, it wasn't even necessary. He didn't need to say it. That's the thing. If I can give any advice to some of you young people as a high school teacher, stop saying stupid stuff online, right? Don't say racial slurs. Don't get up here and say things that are homophobic or just bigoted in any type of way, because it can come back later to haunt you, especially if you don't mean those things. Why put something out into the world if you're not actually racist or you're not actually a bigot, right? Somebody gets that video of you saying something stupid, right? When you're trying to go for an internship, a job, trying to get into a college. All it takes is them like, hey, is this who you allow in your facility? Whatever it may be. And then you ruin the opportunity. People can scream cancel culture. They can scream this and they can scream that. But if you actually did something and then you have to take consequences for that, you can't blame other people. That has to be something that you take onto yourself, right? And in all honesty, even though Banbuds said what he said, I am kind of sad to see him leaving the Friday Night Funkin' community on a bad note, because I believe that he was going to probably leave the Friday Night Funkin' community after he finished his mod anyway, but there's probably a chance that he would have come back at some point. I think now he's probably just done with the community as a whole. And it seems that as more time passes by, we lose more and more mod creators. Now, with that being said, though, I hope that the Friday Night Funkin' community continues to grow. And I hope that as more modders come into the community, they kind of see what has happened in the past and they come into this space being mature and ready to actually do this like a professional in a sense, right? I understand that a lot of people do this as a hobby or to have fun, but when you are an internet presence, especially when you have a very popular mod, there's a lot of people looking at you, a lot of kids and a lot of adults. And with that type of pressure comes a lot of responsibility as well, and you have to treat it like that. And I just hope that people really take that seriously as we're moving forward, because with all the drama that Friday Night Funkin' has been in, it really makes our community as a whole just look crappy. We're definitely not the worst out there, but considering that we're still really young, it makes us look bad. But those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video on the screen here. Let me know how you feel about this mod being canceled, and subscribe today to become a member of the Orseofkorse. Peace, peace.